Hello, and welcome to Wellness Wednesday with 3W. Wellness Wednesday is sponsored by 3W Medical for Women, a nonprofit medical clinic offering free of charge or low-cost women's health services in the Seattle area, regardless of income or insurance status. 3W does not profit off of the health choices women make. The information shared in this podcast is the opinion of the speaker or speakers. Medical information is not intended as individual medical consultation, but for general education only. Always talk to or consult your own health professional for personalized advice regarding medical decisions. And if you're in the Seattle area, consider making an appointment to consult with us. I'm Helen Nguyen, CEO of WAMS/3W Medical for Women, and the host of today's podcast. Hi there, Wellness Wednesday listeners. It's yours truly, back in the studio. Always so grateful to have the opportunity to be in this space, talk to experts that are so passionate about, their lane and what they do. I was privileged to go with Amber, our clinic director, to a conference in San Diego this year, and it encompasses reproductive grief. And you've heard me talk about it so many times on our podcast. I'm an open book about my own infertility journey, my adoption journey, all of that stuff. And it was an eye-opening experience because for the first time, I was able to put words, language, approach to reproductive grief in such a cohesive, honoring, respectful way. And this conference was just, it was beautiful. There was so much intentionality behind it. And I really encourage you as listeners, if you're walking through reproductive grief of any sorts, to really check them out. They're the Institute of Reproductive Grief Care. There were a ton of experts that came and spoke from all different angles of reproductive grief. And one of the speakers who really stood out to me was Dr. Clay. And I'm so excited that he's able and willing to come on to our tiny little podcast today and talk about the cultural awareness in reproductive grief, but for men. Sometimes we focus so much on the women, female aspect or approach to reproductive grief, but we leave the guys out, and they also are impacted by reproductive grief. And I thought Dr. Clay spoke, I want to say, an extensive amount of time at the Institute.
Yeah.
And he just really helped me refocus in there's two people that grieves through reproductive grief. And there's multiple people actually, but we tend to forget about the guys. And why do we do that? I just wanted to get him on this podcast today and pick his brain because he's very eloquent in speaking about this topic. And so thank you, Dr. Clay, for joining us today.
Helen, it is such an honor. I was so excited when you reached out and invited me to talk about the male experience of infertility.
Mm-hmm.
And like we were talking about right before we went live here with our recording,
Mm-hmm.
it's something that I'm passionate about. And, I have my own story with infertility, which I'm sure we'll get into in just a little bit. But yeah, if we're going to ask men to be more vulnerable and talk about their experience, I think, us in the mental health world who are men and have gone through infertility, we have to be vulnerable first and share our story. So any chance that I get to talk about this, I'm gonna take it. And yeah, it's certainly a very unique journey for both men and women. And I think that it's really important to talk about, both experiences. And I'm just honored to talk about what I've seen in my research for men, but also in my own story too.
Wonderful.
For sure.
Yeah. And where are you based out of right now, Dr. Clay?
Yeah. So I am here in Baldwin, Missouri. So that is just outside of St. Louis. Go Cards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, So right now where I'm sitting right now, Helen, is my private practice. This is Shiloh Counseling. Shiloh means place of peace. And it's also, a place in the Bible that holds significance for for pregnancy and, for when, Abraham and Sarah were told that they were going to have a baby and things like that. So that's what we do here. We focus on infertility and the mental health impacts of infertility on both individuals and couples.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I will say, I just want to give a shout out real quick to my fellow Kentuckians. I'm originally
Oh,
from Kentucky.
oh, that's where
So,
that's where the twang comes from.
oh, is my twang coming out? Oh,
Yes,
man.
your twang's coming out. I love it. I very much enjoy it. So I love
Well,
it.
the older I get, Helen, like the more it's starting to come back. It's
Really?
funny. Yeah, yeah. Anytime that I visit Kentucky, my wife is like, "Who are you?" Like, it comes back hard when I go to Kentucky as well.
Really?
So,
Really? So you were
yeah.
born and raised in Kentucky and then has moved out to Missouri.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Born and raised in Kentucky, and
Yeah.
yeah, met my wife and came out here. So,
Wonderful. Wonderful. My husband and my son just came back from a trip to Georgia and Alabama, and the twang out there too. It's just the hospitality. You don't understand, Dr.
yeah,
Clay. The Pacific Northwest, it's beautiful. The summers are right
yeah,
now. If you ever get a chance to visit, gorgeous,
yeah.
gorgeous. But the people can be a little bit cold. And
Oh
so
no.
so these types of topics don't get to be talked a lot about. And like when I was in Atlanta, Georgia, the minute you land in the airport, there's all these little old ladies wanting to help me with my son. The minute you get to SeaTac Airport, which is the airport out here, no one
Yeah,
wants to even make eye contact with you. That's like the cultural vast difference. I don't know if you've
yeah,
ever been to the West Coast, but we can be
yeah.
and specifically Seattle, we can be a little closed off and not
Well, yeah.
and that kind of stuff. So I very much thought you were when I got to experience you on stage and on the panel and stuff like that. I immediately felt this warmth from you, and maybe that's the Kentucky part of you that's coming out, which I really appreciate. Okay, well, let's dive in. I'd love for you to share just your personal journey and your wife's personal journey with reproductive health and reproductive grief. Your testimonial during that conference hit me pretty hard, and I'm a sucker for a man that cries. So when you got teared up and shared your personal story, that really resonated with me. So would you mind sharing it with our listeners today?
Yeah, gosh, I'll be honest, Helen, like as soon as you asked that, like I feel like, oof, I feel that emotion coming up for me now. That story is so,
Mm-hmm.
um, and for all of us that have gone through infertility, the story
Mm-hmm.
it rattles our soul.
Mm,
There's something about it that where infertility t touches not just your mind, body, but your spirit
mm,
almost,
mm, mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I almost think that, parenthood is really this kind of for a lot of people and for a lot of the clients that trust me to serve them as their counselor, a lot of people that talk to me about parenthood, they talk about almost like it's like a higher purpose,
Mm,
almost like it's like there's like an existential weight to it.
mm,
So, whenever infertility happens, there's such an intense loss that feels existential, that feels almost spiritual, almost.
mm,
Maybe that sounds esoteric. I don't know, but it's a very deep feeling. And I think that was true for my wife and I.
mm,
So, we started going through our infertility journey in 2018, Helen. But the story goes back even further for me, and it does for so many guys.
mm,
Because growing up for me, Helen, I had just an incredible mom and an incredible dad.
mm,
And to me, my dad and my grandfather and even my older brother were like superheroes to me.
mhm, mhm,
These were men who were kind, hardworking, and loving, and they were dads.
mm,
They were dads.
mhm,
And so growing up, Helen, it was like, man, I want a little bit of that. I want a little bit of that. Like my purpose in life has always been to meet the girl of my dreams and be a dad, be a husband and be a dad.
mm,
So in 2018, Helen, as you can imagine, trying to navigate, am I am I going to be a dad? Is this even possible for me? Was was kind of earth shattering,
Mm.
really.
Mhm.
Interestingly enough, Helen, at first it wasn't for me. I know that sounds kind of contradictory,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
process of men getting to that grief tends to be different
Mhm.
than women. So something that my research has shown, and also in my clinical experience, is that men tend to grieve at a later stage.
Mhm.
Typically, it's whenever all things have been tried, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So we've tried IUI, we've tried IVF. Whoa, the first round of IVF didn't work. Oh my goodness. Okay, so now now what are we facing? And so for me, that grief started in kind of late 2018, Helen, whenever we were doing all this testing
Mhm.
and to see, hey, what's going on? We've tried Clomid, we've tried IUI.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember the nurse came in, who, by the way, I just want to reiterate, and I think I mentioned this at the Institute.
Mhm.
This nurse was just incredible. We loved her.
Mm.
Um, and also she does this every day,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
she comes in and gives test results. That's just what she does.
Mm.
And so she came in, Helen, and she said, "So we got your secondary sperm analysis done, Clay, and it turns out it's male factor infertility. We had it wrong all along. Who knew?" And then
Wow.
she was like, "So IVF is the next step. Here you go. Talk to this person out front. They're going to set you up with an appointment, and we're going to, just move forward with treatment."
Mhm.
And I remember, um, I remember the Keurig that was to my left and the strong coffee smell. I remember what
Mm.
the nurse was wearing. I remember her odd perfume that she was wearing that day. I remember what my wife was wearing. It was like such an intense wave of shame.
Mm.
Shame, Helen, that was trying hard to keep it together.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No,
Uh,
thank you.
um, but it was shame that, oh my gosh, like it's just been assumed this whole time that my wife was
The
the problem,
issue.
quote unquote,
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
issue,
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. And as we walked out, I remember grabbing her hand
Mm.
but then not being able to look at her,
Wow.
because I was so embarrassed and so ashamed. Um, and it also rattled a part of my masculinity, Helen. And this is something so
Mhm.
I'm doing a research study now on just, the male experience of infertility.
Mhm.
And a lot of men have shared, Helen, that uh, not being able to provide a child for
Mm.
my wife, it feels like I'm not man enough now to be with her. Like,
Mm.
and to be honest, as a researcher and as somebody that's gone through this myself, I want to stay curious about that. What is that
Mhm.
about?
Mhm.
But that is something that a lot of men experience, especially for male factor infertility. Um, and
Can
so,
Can I ask you a
yeah,
question as we linger on that really quick?
sure.
I know you're at the beginning of your research, or it's not finalized yet, but are you seeing that regardless of if the man in the relationship is quote unquote the problem or
Sure.
not, is there the same feeling of being um, not able to provide, not able to, there's this lack of masculinity, regardless of he's the person that's dealing with the issue or not? Or is it
Right.
kind of the same feelings overall?
Yeah, good question, Helen. It's actually it tends to be a lingering feeling for no matter who is the source of the infertility.
Yeah.
However, my research is starting to show, and again, I like how you preface it because I want to preface it too. It's
Yeah.
not finalized,
Right.
but it's starting to show that uh, when it's male factor infertility
Mm.
or when it's uh, both factor infertility. Men tend to feel a deeper level anytime that their biology is involved. Men
Mm-hmm.
tend to feel the sense of I'm not man enough.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Mm. Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, no, not at all, not at all.
Yeah.
No, it's so. But I think that's a great question, Helen, because it
Mm-hmm.
goes back to, this concept of I'm not man enough.
Mm.
It produces this sense of shame,
Mm-hmm.
and shame is a very, very hard emotion to
Yeah.
carry. And in fact, you know, and so I do mostly couple therapy. I'm
Mm.
a Gottman therapist, if
Mm-hmm.
anybody's familiar with Gottman therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And my research has been Gottman therapy with couples going through infertility. And one of the biggest things that we focus on in our time together is shame.
Mm.
And and men tend to carry that, like I said, when they're the source of infertility or they're just anyway biologically involved.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Okay.
and so I definitely carried that, Helen. I carried that. I had to process that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and so yeah, so we started actually going to couple therapy, my wife and I, just because we were thinking this is something that's really difficult. We don't know like how to navigate this, how to process this. And we felt very cared for by our couple therapists. We felt very loved. And at the same time, we felt like that maybe she didn't really know the unique aspects
Mm.
of infertility, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah.
so that it kind of left us feeling, cared for, loved, but also like not getting a ton of direction.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still kind of feeling lost a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we kind of go along, we're still processing, Helen. We end up having 4 viable embryos. And and I remember I was sitting in my old office, Helen, and the nurse just called me and my wife too, when she was at work, and said, "Hey, we have the gender of your embryos. Would you like to know?"
Wow.
And so it was sure. And so we found out the gender of our embryos. And so that was
Wow.
like a shock, and that was almost like too much information, like overwhelming,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so that was another thing for us to kind of process. And so then we started to prepare ourselves for, okay, we're going to have boys. All of our embryos were boys. And so we did our transfer. And then Marjorie, my wife, developed something called a subchorionic hematoma, which is a blood clot that happens more often with women that have gone through IVF.
Wow.
It's a blood clot that forms behind the fetus, and
Wow.
usually it usually mimics the symptoms of miscarriage, but the miscarriage is not actually happening.
Wow.
So I remember it was February 21st, 2019. We had our first bleeding episode, and
Wow.
I was about to give my wife her progesterone shot for the day,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a lot, and
Wow.
knew that we just knew that we had lost him,
Mm.
and and so we called the infertility clinic, and they said, yeah, it sounds like that a miscarriage is happening, and it
Mm.
was snowing. I remember it was like 6 inches of snow outside, and so we called back and forth. And eventually we land on um, going to the hospital just to get checked out. And so again, be mindful of 6 inches of snow. So like there's like a backup person there,
Yeah.
who's doing the ultrasound. And she said, "Oh, I found a heartbeat." And then she said, "Oh, no, I don't think so."
Oh
Oh, oh,
gosh.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. So that was about 15 minutes of back and forth.
Oh gosh.
Um, Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man.
It was just, and I can remember just feeling a sense of just intense rage, as
Yeah.
you can.
Yes.
But we did get a heartbeat, and
Wow.
um, and going through that multiple times was really hard. Of having those bleeding episodes and all of that, and there's just like so. I did a study in back in 2023 where I looked at the trauma symptoms in people that have experienced infertility, miscarriage, stillbirth, complicated pregnancy. And it was a sample of 281 women, mostly women.
Mm-hmm.
Those 4 guys in the sample. But what that study showed is that after a miscarriage, a lot of women have PTSD symptoms associated with what we call arousal. So that what that is that's waiting for the next shoe to drop. So it's like waiting on pins and needles, like the worst is going to happen. And so my wife and I, because of that subchorionic hematoma, we were feeling that like, okay, so when are we going to lose him? Like, when is it just going to happen? It's almost like bracing. But through, I don't know what it was, just, my wife's body processing it or divine intervention, whatever you may want to call it. Jonah was born September 7th, 2019. And yeah, and it changed everything.
Wow.
And yeah. But in saying that, I know that, there's so many guys who are in the waiting still, who are
Yes.
maybe listening to this podcast even who are in the waiting still. And so I think a part of my journey now, Helen, that I'm reckoning with is that we have our two boys, we have Jonah and Isaac. But there's still so much of infertility, the trauma of infertility that I carry, that my wife carries. Decisions around what do we do with embryos? What do we tell our boys? All these different factors that just kind of linger. And I want to talk more about that, and as we talk more about what my research shows about that. But infertility is an experience that kind of stays with us.
Yeah, it becomes a part of your story. It becomes
Right.
and so in so many ways, for my personal, journey with infertility, I've been trying to teeter-totter on it's part of my story, but does it define me? Does it make me less than? There's all those types of questions that kind of is there subconsciously. It's like an invisible disability that you can't. Yeah. So it's yeah, I feel like sometimes people are like, okay, Helen, you talk about it too much or you hyper focus on it too much. So I'm trying to find a balance myself on
Sure.
how to talk about it. Most of the time I've been very much at peace with it. And that's come a long way. And I'm pretty sure our listeners have listened to me talk about it quite a bit at this point. But yeah, there's a lot. Is there, in your opinion, has there been a rise in infertility within a certain generation based on diet and environmental factors, or has infertility has always been around, but now we've just been very better at giving it language and giving it a face, and more men like you are talking about it or coming out of the woodworks to talk about it. Has it always been there and we just didn't give it the weight and light that it deserves?
Helen, I think both are true. I think both are true. The CDC, updated their numbers for the prevalence of infertility amongst couples from 1 in 8 to 1 in 6. I think it's 1 in 5 in the United States, actually.
Wow.
So that number just keeps going up. So there's so many factors. I was just reading an article, the other research article. That's what I do, Helen. I'm a nerd. I just read articles about this experience.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about it. I'm telling you, I'm passionate.
Sure. Yes.
Yes. It was a really great sociology article by a researcher named Arthur Greel, and he's got some writings on infertility. So essentially, what he was talking about was that people are waiting longer to have kids. And, there may be some environmental factors as well. And also we're talking about it more. So we're more aware. And I think that, a lot of generations like Gen X, Millennials, Gen Z now, we're a lot more open with our experiences. And so it is being talked about more too.
And to just play devil's advocate really quick about just, as a mental health specialist, do you think there's a hyper focus on it more now that we're talking about it more? Because, the great generation and boomers, they've been known to be a bit more resilient than a millennial like myself.
Oh, sure.
I feel like, we've really, and I'm making fun of my own generation in this, and I fall into that because, we coined the kind of like special snowflake kind of
Right.
title.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so because we haven't, my background as a daughter of Vietnamese immigrants, they've been through a war. They were the original boat
Oh,
people. So
geez.
they're
Yep.
my mom, who's been through her own miscarriage of my older sister, rarely talks about it because there is this sense of it's done. That chapter is done. We don't bring it up. Now that I've been in this space and I've gone to this conference and and interacted with folks like you and gotten that type of education and knowledge around the topic, I'm more in tune with certain things she still says and how that miscarriage has impacted her and my dad. But
Hmm.
their generation is very much like that's just what happens. Like
Right.
in reproductive grief just happens and we just move on with our lives. Do you think there's in our generation or the younger generation there is a hyper focus that can be unhealthy?
Hmm. Hmm. Gosh, that's a good question, Hannah. I'm not sure if I've really processed that, but what I would say is, so yeah, as a fellow millennial too,
Mm-hmm.
we do hear that a lot,
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, too vulnerable or too touchy-feely, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'm speaking for other generations, maybe, and I don't want to do that, but
Yeah, we're generalizing people.
yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
we're
yeah. Just
talking
we'll put
in
that out.
big general form. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Putting that out there.
Yeah.
But I think that if there is a hyper focus on it, it's due to the disenfranchisement that's so common with infertility.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, Dr. Kenneth Doka talks about disenfranchised grief, and disenfranchised grief is, you know, um, grief that cannot be publicly mourned or is socially sanctioned.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm experiencing the death of a dream of being a dad, if I'm experiencing that, there's not a funeral, um, there's not a wake, there's not a,
Mm-hmm.
for that dream. It's
Mm-hmm.
just, but I still feel it. My body still feels like there's been a death. My
Mm-hmm.
spirit
Mm-hmm.
still feels like there's been a death. And so, but because we can't see it, it's like we disenfranchise
Mm-hmm.
others. We usually disenfranchise through intellectualization, where we might say, like one of my colleagues at the Institute of Reproductive Grief Care at the conference this year, she talked about intellectualization as, if you say at least to somebody who's experiencing miscarriage or infertility, don't say it. It's like, at least you have a healthy amount of embryos, or at least you have another baby, or at least you
Mm-hmm.
have,
Mm-hmm.
these things that they're very up here,
Mm-hmm.
pointing to me right now if people are listening.
Yeah.
But we really need to be down here towards our heart,
Heart. Mm-hmm.
because we're experiencing a death, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, if let's say, for example, my brother, who I love dearly, let's say something terrible happened to him,
Mm-hmm.
and I tell you, Helen, like something terrible happened to my brother, and you said, well, at least you had, you know,
Yeah.
37 good years with him,
Yeah. At least you
like,
had him.
don't be, yeah,
That's
yeah,
so
that's very
insensitive.
right, exactly. But that's how we sometimes we talk to people that are going through infertility or,
Mm-hmm.
or miscarriage. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there was a very, very dear friend of mine, Helen, who had twins. Or he and his wife had twins,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the twins died in childbirth.
Mm.
And
Gosh.
so many folks told them, like, well, at least you have another one,
Oh
and
gosh.
that's kind of an extreme,
Right.
you know.
Right.
And at the same time, I just think that I use that illustration to say that I think that people are tired of the disenfranchisement. And so we
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
we talk about it in the hopes of being heard. Somebody please see me
Mm-hmm.
for my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you gotten pushback from other men in your life or in the professional, mental health world that think that men just don't have this type of grief? Have you had any pushback about that, or have they really grasped on to like, yeah, we should talk about this more?
Yeah, yeah. I think that I've gotten more of that, more of,
Oh,
and interestingly enough, I get the like you mentioned, Helen, of like, no, like men don't have this kind of grief. We don't talk about this. I actually get that more from men
hmm.
because a lot of times what we do as guys is we disenfranchise ourselves,
Yes.
or we'll talk about like, oh, it's not me going through the medical procedure. It's not me getting the progesterone shots. It's not
Mm,
me. It's not my body. Very true. And I think that that comes from a place of guilt.
mm,
A very, very dear friend of mine who went through infertility and, would often tell his wife when he would give the progesterone shot, like, hey, can I get a shot too, just to make it even? Like he said it's kind
wow.
of funny, but he actually meant it. He actually said,
Wow.
like, I give you a shot. I want to take one too, because I feel just so guilty that it's all on you, you know.
Wow.
And so we do this thing. I call it well-intended chivalry, Ellen. It's just where we kind of put our wives on this kind of like pain pedestal almost like, whoa, what they're going through is just way more than what I'm going through. Physically, maybe, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, I think we need to lean into the gray, Ellen, as
Mm,
far as what our emotional experience is. So, and what I mean by that is that my wife, my partner can have this experience, and I, as a man, can have this experience, and we experience it together.
mm-hmm.
And my pain doesn't disqualify your pain. We are just two people madly in love with each other,
Mm,
experiencing pain,
mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's typically my goal with couples going through infertility is to recognize that, to hold the end. But in general, just to
Mm-hmm.
get back to the spirit of your question, I think I get a lot more of like, no, this is great. Talk more about
Mm.
the experience of guys.
W- In your experience, when, because I'm again, I'm making sweeping generalized statements, folks. When when the male partner in the relationship is unable to be as vulnerable as someone like you, Dr. Clay, or they've just not reached that point yet, how
Sure.
does that impact the other person, the other spouse
Mm-hmm.
or the other partner? And
Mm-hmm.
in your experience doing couples counseling and therapy, what
Mm-hmm.
has been some breakthroughs for couples that have invested the time and energy to really get down to the root of acknowledging that there's male reproductive grief? Like what has helped their relationship get to the next level, or because I think that's really healthy, but
Yeah.
maybe that's not for everyone, or I think I'm thinking about my husband because he's so skeptical of all this kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I'm like, no, 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 like you need to talk to this guy who's done the work, and
Mhm.
this is his new way of thinking, or new way of appreciating his wife, or new way of
Mhm.
being in the trenches with her in the reproductive grief, you know, struggles. Because grief is,
Mhm.
from what I understand from the institute, and what one of the themes that really came up for me was grief. And I knew this on a head level kind of situation, is like grief is not linear. Grief is not linear. You
Right.
don't just get through it. And because I lost my grandpa, and I would he loved Hugo Boss cologne. I just remember walking through the mall, and I would smell that cologne,
Oh,
and it
wow.
would bring back him in such a it hit me hard, because I was so um I love him dearly, still do. But grief
Mm.
is not linear. I remember there
Right.
was a chart at the institute that someone drew. Grief was like, it was like my son's
Yeah.
coloring. So, how have you been able to see the difference
Mhm.
between the people that have you know, put work in it,
Mhm.
and the people who are still kind of like, it's just not for me.
Mhm.
I don't know if I'm ready for that type of conversation, or it's a lot of vulnerability, or I'm not Dr. Clay. I'm not willing to talk about it like this.
Yeah.
What might they be missing out on?
Mm. Man, I am so excited to like answer this. This is the thing that I love to do the most. And like I tell my wife all the time, like when I work with couples and they do turn towards each other, Helen,
Mm-hmm.
and there is this understanding now, there's this attachment that happens. And it's almost like I feel like I'm on, and this may sound really dramatic to your listeners. That's fine,
Yeah.
but it's how I feel.
Yeah.
It's
That's how
like
you feel.
it's like yeah, I feel like it's almost like holy ground. Like I'm like watching
Mm,
this beautiful relationship come back together,
mm.
you know? It's what really, really keeps me going
Yeah.
and doing work.
Yeah.
Um, so what you're describing there, Helen, is what we call, or what I call, I say we, me.
Yeah.
This is what I call meta emotion mismatching.
Mm,
So John Gottman talks about meta emotions. So John Gottman is, which by the way, he's written all kinds of books. You can
hmm.
just search Google. He's written all kinds of stuff about couples, and
Yes. Yeah.
one of the only researchers to actually research what makes couples last. So, so he talks about meta emotions. So meta emotions is how do we navigate our emotions? You know, do we sit with them and do we are we curious about them? Or do we intellectualize them
Mm-hmm.
and kind of pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and say, no, like let's just keep going. We got to solve the problem ahead of us. No matter what we feel, we just keep going. You know, and this is not a knock on guys. I'm a dude. I feel like I
Sure.
can say that,
Sure.
but it happens all the time with the couples that trust me for couples therapy who've gone through infertility. It's almost like infertility pushes men and women into these deep, deep different corners of women are very like emotional processors and like let's sit with it, validate,
Mm-hmm.
be heard, be seen,
Mm-hmm.
and men tend to go into this problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
And so we that's where we experience the meta emotion mismatching. Now, are either one of those bad or wrong? I would argue no. I would
Mm-mm.
argue no. Like there,
Mm-mm.
it's just a way that we process things.
Sure.
However, whenever the person who's trying to be heard, to be seen, usually again I'm stereotyping, but
Sure. Yep.
my experience has been the
Mm-hmm.
wife,
Mm-hmm.
and she's saying, "Gosh, I just feel like there's no hope, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just so overwhelmed. I can't do another shot. I
Mm-hmm.
can't do this."
Mm-hmm.
And what the research shows, Helen, is that that person then needs to be seen, heard, needs to feel safe and loved. And but so many times men will feel a wave of kind of like, I don't know what to do because we're told as men in society that we fix things.
Yes.
That's what men do. Men
Mm-hmm.
fix things, men
Mm-hmm.
problem solve. And and at times, and again, kind of generalizing dudes here, but
Sure.
if we can't in the moment, then that makes us feel very, very anxious and very insecure and almost ashamed.
Mm.
And so we then intellectualize it so we don't have to face it.
Mm-hmm.
So then the response could be something like, all right, babe, hang in there. You can do it. Like almost like well, at least, I don't know, at least we've only got 8 more shots left, or, you know, some other form of intellectualization, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that.
Mm.
I did that with my wife. And I can remember her saying so many times, I don't need you to be positive. I don't need you to be a positive force around me.
Mm-hmm.
She said, I need you to meet me where I'm at,
Mm.
you know? Um,
That's a
and
wise
I got to
woman.
tell you, what's that?
That's a wise woman right there.
Let me tell you, I'm married up. I'm married up. Yeah, yeah. But I also got to tell you, I'll be vulnerable here.
Yeah.
It's really hard to like take off the problem solver hat, like just the guy hat,
Mm-hmm.
and then try to be caring and not
Yeah.
put on the therapist hat, because then I can start talking in a way where then she's like, all right, well, you're not my therapist either. You know, like, right? Well, I'm just trying to trying to do the dance here.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but what happens when if we can just say like if we can just name what we're feeling in the moment,
Mm.
it's what we call as researchers, what we call interpersonal mindfulness.
Mm.
If we can just name like babe, I feel really anxious that whatever I'm going to say is going to make it worse right now in
Mm.
this. I feel
Mm.
really kind of anxious about this right now, and I love you. and I just want to be here for you. That's what I want.
Mm.
Oof, man, when we get that, that's real, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And if we can just be vulnerable and share what we're experiencing in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
um, it can be very, very healing. And I
Mm-hmm.
see couples all the time that turn towards each other and do this, even amidst infertility, miscarriage, and they have just this beautiful relationship.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a controversial question
Ooh, lay it
because
on me.
because it is a controversial topic right now, especially
Okay.
because it's an election year and it's been hijacked politically. Have you, through your research, have you interacted with couples that are dealing with reproductive grief in abortion?
Hmm.
And how is that different for men versus women?
Sure.
How do men, because I, just from what I observed in the work that I've done for the last decade, just observing our patients and interactions with men and women, has I I believe that abortion impacts men. That's my opinion about it.
Yep.
Now, is there a ton of research? I have not found a lot of it because, again, it's been hyper focused on the women side of things and then it's been hijacked politically, right? So,
Sure.
but in your opinion, do men experience reproductive grief in the areas of abortion?
Hmm. I think that there was a poster presented at the Institute about this. I think, if I'm recalling right, I think it was the winner. It might have been of the poster contest. I should know this. I'm a little embarrassed right now because I was the poster committee chairman this
Oh,
year for this. I can't remember. I feel a little embarrassed right now, being very vulnerable on air. So,
totally fine.
uh,
Totally fine.
but this is an area I'm actually a lot more unfamiliar with, and I want to kind of tread carefully.
Sure.
Uh, because I don't want to invalidate. I don't want to
Yeah.
be the cause of hurt. And like you said, it is a very charged issue.
Yes.
But I think it's very plain to say that it can and does affect men,
Mm-hmm.
and that I would dare to say, and it's okay that it affects men, and that we. I think it's probably healthiest to hold on to that and be curious about it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to mean this or that. It
Mm-hmm.
can it can just be what we feel,
Right.
or what we experience. But that's really, yeah, I think I need to look into that more.
Yeah. I just gave you a project.
You did. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, as you're, you know, researching and becoming more and more of an expert in this area, because with the availability of the abortion pill and access to abortion in general,
Mhm.
it I have to believe it has to impact both people who created
Yeah,
this pregnancy. It didn't take one person,
sure.
so it has to impact the other partner in some form or another.
Mhm.
And is it being addressed? Or are we waiting for the shoe to drop one day and then it blows up into something much bigger when it could have been preventable or
Mhm.
researched or looked at? Because that's, again, I mean, the burden of the abortion conversation is so much on the women sometimes.
Right.
And where does the male partner stand in the issue? Or
Mhm.
does he we haven't published this episode yet. I'm waiting for the right time and I don't know when that is, but I had a guest speaker come in and he shared his abortion story.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
He shared his abortion
Wow.
story and how he drove his girlfriend at the time to her abortion appointment. Now that was 20 plus years ago, and now he's starting to feel all these emotions around it. He doesn't, and it was mainly a podcast about him telling the story,
Sure.
but you could sense that he was lacking language, or he was even hesitant to even tell the story because he was just like, is this even my story to tell? And he
Wow.
he 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 then got married to another woman and
Mhm.
then dealt with infertility.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
he was just like, was that a missed opportunity? Was that a
Oh my
gift
goodness.
that I totally, so that, you know, so, so this conversation kind of brought him back into my brain, back into my memory about these raw emotions that I had with this individual that was willing to tell his story and his perspective on it.
Mhm.
And he's now in his, I want to say he's in his 50s, just now unpacking all of that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I'm just wondering if that was something that you will start seeing in your practice as
Mhm.
the accessibility to abortion, because apparently 70% of abortions are being done at home through the abortion pill.
Wow.
So
Okay.
how does that impact our community? How does it impact our nation as a whole? And how does
Sure.
that impact men? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to it. So,
Yeah. Well, clearly, I mean, this gentleman that came on to your show and was vulnerable. I'm so thankful that I'm really excited to um to hear his story and to be
mm-hmm.
able to listen to that whenever you guys decide it's the right time.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously, it had an effect on him,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
um, that doesn't take away from whatever his girlfriend at the time experience was.
Sure. Yes.
It's going back to the and like we can both experience this, and it's okay
Yes.
that
Yeah.
we're just experiencing what we're experiencing because I was just having supervision with one of the counselors that works for me, and we're talking about just being human.
Mm-hmm.
We're human beings. We're
Mm-hmm.
human beings who experience grief, who experience joy. We experience all the things that come
Mm-hmm.
along with being human, and I think it's just okay to embrace that.
Yeah.
You know.
What is one what's a nugget you want to leave our male listeners who are possibly walking through the trenches of infertility, miscarriage with their partners? What is one thing you want to tell them today that
Mhm.
could be a relief or a sense of healing or being seen,
Mhm.
and would you be open to them reaching out to you?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
So yes, I would totally be open to them reaching out to me. I mean, yeah, would love that.
Yeah.
I'm actually, doing a research study now where we're going to be interviewing men on their experience through infertility. So
Wow.
if men would like to participate,
Mm-hmm.
you can. If not, that's okay too. If you just want to chat, I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's okay too. But what I would tell your listeners who might be male or
Mm-hmm.
guys that might be listening to this, Ellen, is
Mm-hmm.
I would say, my brother, you are not alone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you're not alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, when I went through this, I had three guys and my brother who were just so, excuse me, four guys and my brother who had my back and who I could text with these very, very emotional text messages because I felt like I was white knuckling.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys validated me. These guys, my friend Logan, who's an incredible cook. This guy like can really cook. He brought over barbecue one day. Like,
Mm-hmm.
my brother, who I love and adore, and is also kind of like a man's man. He's like 6'2". I'm pretty sure he bench presses like 300 pounds or something. Like he's a construction worker. Like I am not. That's why I'm a therapist. Get that gene from our dad. But I remember just the beauty of him just being like, man, that's hard,
Mm.
but I'm here for you, Clay, and just
That's so
getting
sweet.
that. Yeah, he's a great guy. And so for a lot of guys, though, we don't have that. We don't have
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of nuggets. One is you're not alone.
Mm.
And can I push you, brother, to just take a risk and reach out,
Mm.
and reach out to guys, and you might get like, hey man, that sucks. Do you want to go to a baseball game? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and that may be the depth that you get. That's okay. Like
Yeah.
that's good.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, so take that risk. That's okay.
Mm,
If you're going through infertility and your partner, like you're going through this with a partner,
mm-hmm,
it's worth it to slow down and think about what you're experiencing in that moment and just voice it.
mm,
It's worth it, you know? And your person doesn't just need your strength, your
Mhm.
person needs your vulnerability.
mm,
Because in your
mm-hmm,
weakness, your partner will find strength.
mm.
Now, that last part is the biggest challenge of all because
Yes.
for a lot of other guys to be weak and vulnerable brings on shame
Mm-hmm,
for us,
mm-hmm,
you know. But at the same time, like I tell couples all the time, we yield to win, you know.
mm.
So yeah, that was more than one nugget, Helen. That was like
No,
50.
that's beautiful. It's so good. It's so good. It just makes me just, I guess the follow-up question, I thought I didn't have one, but the follow-up question would be what is the partner's responsibility? What's my responsibility
Hmm.
to help you as my husband, as my boyfriend, as my partner in
Mhm.
this time of feeling shame, feeling weak? What should I be saying? What should I be encouraging?
Mhm.
Or do I stay out of it? Or do I go, you need to go
Mhm.
talk to another guy about this? Because
Mhm.
sometimes we're not we shouldn't be the therapist in the relationship, right? It's just not, that's not our role.
Right, right.
So what should the wives, the girlfriends be doing or saying that
Mhm.
could help in the process of processing reproductive grief for men?
Mhm. Gosh, whew. Didn't see that one coming. That's a good one. That's a good one, Helen. What I will tell you, and you alluded to this, is that we don't, I think as men, we don't need you to be the therapist.
Mm,
I think that for a lot of the couples that I see, women feel very anxious about their boyfriends or husbands
mm,
not sharing.
mm-hmm,
So they feel very anxious about like, oh, there's probably so much down there. And I want to get in there and get it out, you know,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and that comes from a place of care and love.
mm-hmm,
And also men can feel very cornered and overwhelmed by that,
mm-hmm,
you know.
mm-hmm,
Um, there will be signs that that we are trying to fix things. Like for example, I was doing individual therapy, a client, and her husband were going through infertility, and it was like their second round of IVF, and we were doing virtual therapy, and I
Mhm.
just hear just like all these like saws and like hammers and stuff, and I was like, what's going on? And she's like, well, my husband's remodeling the bathroom. Like ever since we started at this second round of IVF, he's just been remodeling the house, you know?
I remember the story. You told it
Yeah.
on Instagram.
Yeah. And that's okay. That's okay.
Mhm.
And what men really need
Mhm.
is to a lot of times is to be able to fix something or feel like they're in control of something.
Mhm.
And then they need the antidote for shame, which is words of affirmation. I hate to say it, but men, we need our ego stroked a little bit, you know?
Oh,
Um,
that's so hard.
so I know. But whoa, like you remodeled this bathroom, baby, it looks incredible. Like you're such a great handyman. Like, you
Mhm.
know, or like you were, it needs to be genuine too. It
Yes, of
don't
course.
it
Right.
needs to be genuine, but like
Yeah.
you're an incredible husband. I love you so much. Like, yes, it's male factor infertility. I just want to let you know that I'm so glad I'm with you.
Mm.
Those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you for embracing this as the thing that you talk about
Mm,
because it is so needed. I just think of all the men in my life that I wish had the words to
mm,
to communicate what you've communicated. And maybe that's it. That is like the more you talk about this topic, the more you're giving space and language and the ability to talk about it in a way that isn't it's weakness, but it's like it's not a bad weakness. It's
right.
something that I think women would appreciate seeing sometimes in
Yeah.
this path. with our partners, with our spouses. And, there are so many times, there are so many procedures that I remember going through, medication that I had to take, that I wish I was more patient with my husband and being able to communicate it with him so that he could then feel vulnerable enough to tell me what he's feeling. I think, my husband and I have since adopted our little son. And so that has been another, layer to our story. But the infertility is the baseline, kind of situation. It's never going to go away. We have undiagnosed infertility. And right now that's the space we're sitting in. And for now, it's okay. But having a resource like you, knowing that this is something that you're passionate about, and being able to turn to someone like you is it's gold. So thank you for doing what you do and the resources and tools that you provide for us folks that are navigating this grief. It's very powerful.
Oh, thank you. Well, I got to tell you, it's life-giving for me to do this, and also it's scary. And I just want to, I mean, I'm sweaty right now. I'm sweaty because, I'm on a podcast and like getting able to talk about this. And if Jonah, Isaac, my two little boys, if they ever listen to this one day, I want them to know that Daddy was scared but did it anyway. And so for us guys, I want to just say it's scary, but do it anyway. It's scary to think about it, but do it anyway. And so I appreciate the opportunity to give a platform to my experience, my research. Know that I'm not done. I'm just getting started. This is, I defended my PhD last year, started Shiloh Counseling, and we've blown up. We have 5 counselors now. Publishing more research. So I've kind of grabbed this calling and ran with it. And so I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, Helen. You're great to talk with, and talking with people that listen to your podcast, and feel free to reach out. Clay@ShilohCounselingLLC.com. It's a long it's a long handle, I know, but
we'll have it. We'll have a link to it. We'll have a link.
Oh, perfect. Yeah. People, and for all of you out there listening, feel free to email me.
Thank you.
You got it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I feel like we, again, just scratched this surface of this topic. I'm eager to have you back on. Please keep us updated on your research, and I'm sure we'll have another conversation soon. And thank you to our listeners for staying with us till the end. And if this is a topic or a podcast that you would love to share with someone that is dealing with this, that hasn't had the language or terms or even allowing them to even feel these feelings, and I really highly encourage you to pass this topic on to a loved one that you know. So thank you, Dr. Clay. It's so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So good to talk to you.
You too. Absolutely.
For more information about 3W, please visit our website at 3wmedical.org. That's the number 3, the letter W, medical.org. From there, you can learn more information about the services we provide, book an appointment, or make a donation if you'd like to support our mission. You can also call our office at 206-588-0311. That's 206-588-0311. If you like this episode, please share it with others and consider subscribing on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, stay healthy and be well.